Hello, everybody, and welcome back. My name's Don Arleth, and you're watching World Talks here on TVP World. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy called for faster arms deliveries and reinforced Kyiv's commitment to European defense after meeting NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at the Munich Security Conference. He highlighted Ukraine's readiness to launch joint defense projects and contribute to war experience to strengthen Europe's security. Now, joining me to discuss the takeaways from Munich is Michał Matlak, Acting Director at the Institute for Innovation and Technology, Łukasiewicz Network. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us on World Talks. So, when we're discussing the developments there at the Munich Security Conference, of course, we saw the speeches from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He mentioned that the NATO Secretary General usually starts and ends his conversations with talking about how effective the PURL initiative has been and should be. So, in your judgment, how effective has PURL been ensuring Ukraine's air defense's readiness? Because I know that there's been some problems with Ukraine getting its hands on the missiles and being able to protect the big cities and the infrastructure that it needs.
We don't have all the data, but we know that it was partially effective. The most important reason why this initiative came into life was to kind of stabilize the help to Ukraine, and it has been done. But looking at Ukraine this winter, we also see how bad Russian attacks are. They are very bad because the attacks are more intense than they used to be, but also because the air defense systems and kind of anti the Ukraine is using is kind of are also not good enough to stop many of these attacks. So I would say that this initiative is partially working. It's very important for Ukraine, obviously, but it's not enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully they can boost that. We do have the news of this 38 billion euro in further pledged military assistance for Ukraine coming out of the Ukraine Contact Group this week. What do you think that amount of money is going to do for Ukraine? And is that over 2 years? Is that over 1 year?
Well, this is an important kind of sum of money, obviously. So it's very important for Ukraine to get this support. But it's not a revolution. This will not change the course of the war. Ukraine needs much more, and this is a good sign. As most of this money comes from European states, it is as a sign of kind of increased engagement of European states in the wake of at least partial departure of the US from European affairs, but it's not enough. Again, like with the PURL initiative.
The Ukrainian defense minister said that he wants to increase the battlefield losses for Russians from 35,000 per month to 50,000. He says this is what could change the tide of the war. At least it will stop the Russian advances, which are currently very slow. How do you suppose that they would do that, increase the losses from 35 to 50,000 on the front lines per month?
Well, I'm not an expert on the battlefield, so I cannot give you the strategy of Ukraine. But what we do know is that Ukraine is learning from this battlefield experience. It's especially when it comes to technology they are using. I guess that this will be one of the ways to increase the losses of Russians. But here I cannot offer you any detail.
Okay, joint defense projects in Europe, of course, they started in Denmark, and now I believe at the launch of the Munich Security Conference, they kicked off in Germany, and they also plan to be in 10 European countries very soon. So what does that whole situation look like? Will those joint development defense projects be dedicated to produce weapons both for NATO countries and for Ukraine, or primarily for Ukraine?
Well, there are many joint defense projects in Europe, I'm not sure about which one we're talking here, but the Danish one is about financing arms production in Ukraine. That's the goal of this project, and there are indeed more, and there are talks about intensification of this kind of projects. I know also Poland is involved in some of them. So this is one group of projects, so financing arms production in Ukraine. And the other group of projects is about kind of weapons production in the EU, mostly for Ukraine at the moment, but not only. But the idea is also to strengthen the capabilities of the EU.
There are also drone technologies that are being sought after by many European countries. Poland has tried to exchange the MiGs for drones and drone technologies from the Ukrainians. I'm not exactly sure where that stage is at right now. I think they're still discussing it. But how can that help the whole entire environment when it comes to Ukraine's experience with this and that of the rest of NATO?
Well, we learned in Ukraine how important drones are. Drawing lessons from Ukraine is at the moment one of the most important things to do when one wants to produce drones. That's the reason why this cooperation is so vital. This is the reason why Ukrainian companies are being invited to help and to work together with the European companies, including also Polish ones, to produce drones, and also to learn how to transfer technology quickly, because in Ukraine this kind of new developments in technology are transferred really quickly from kind of the laboratories to the battlefield, and I think that that's the kind of one of the reasons why the rest of the world, at least the Western world, wants to learn how it is being done and how it can be done in other countries.
Yes, I don't know if you've heard about those recent exercises in Estonia, but it looks like about 12 Ukrainian drone operators were able to take out 2 battalions, I think, in military exercises there, showing that NATO is really not prepared for using its armor together with drones. We're still fighting wars of the past. How should we engage with Ukraine? You know, we're spending hundreds of millions of euros now in modernizing our militaries. Maybe we should take Ukraine up on offers to teach us a little bit more about what kind of equipment is needed. Very much referring to the MiGs and the drones that President Zelenskyy was saying that that's not our highest priority right now. They have other priorities.
Of course. I mean, no, I think you're absolutely right, but I think also that this is happening. So everything that is happening in Europe now regarding defense is partially, at least, related to what's happening in Ukraine. So these lessons are being learned and analyzed. Obviously, this is not the most important thing for Ukraine now to teach Europe how to fight Russia, but at the same time, because of intense contacts between Western allies and Ukraine, these lessons are being drawn. So I'd say that, you know, most of the things that are happening in Europe are really very much related to what's happening in Ukraine. At the same time, one has to see that, you know, the nature of the battlefield in Ukraine, so between Ukraine and Russia, and a possible battlefield between, for example, Russia and the Baltic states, or Finland or Poland, is different. So it will not be the same war. At the same time, these lessons, as I said, are crucial indeed, as you said.
Well, back to the Munich Security Conference, Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, said that the alliance can win, quote, every battle with Russia. What assumptions underpin this? And I mean, doesn't that type of statement contrast with the stark warning that everybody is saying that NATO is going to have a direct conflict with Russia if there's peace in Ukraine or before the end of the decade?
Well, we don't know what's going to happen, but obviously the NATO Secretary General has to kind of promote the alliance, and he has good reasons to do so. The strength of NATO is still remarkable. So he's right to say that it's very likely that NATO, if activated, wins in such a confrontation. But obviously, it's part of the kind of the modern communication, where both sides have to promote their point of view and
It looks like we have a little bit of technical difficulties. I don't know if we have lost our guest. Oh no, I think we're still going.
I'm with you.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
You know, there's been a lot of talk about sanctions and how the European Union needs to up its game when it comes to sanctioning Russia's oil revenues, you know, its shadow fleet. Is there consensus, growing consensus on this amongst Europeans? And what do you think will need to be done so that the Europeans can actually direct these sanctions with that actually bite? I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, the sanctions do bite. Obviously, they differ. The European Union adopted around 19 packages of sanctions. Some of them were more were heavier. Some of them less heavy, but still they do bite. Obviously, what we learned over the past 4 years is that Russia was able to create kind of a system to overcome the sanctions, mostly through the cooperation with China. So another kind of world order has been created on our eyes, with China at its heart, and that's the reason why Russian economy is still functioning, even if there are some signs of weakening in the last months. So sanctions are working. It was not Russia to do that. At the same time, the West is weaker than decades before, in the last decades, and we can see that the cooperation between Russia, China, India, and other countries, mostly from the BRICS group, is helping them overcome these sanctions. But I do think that there will be more sanctions. Another package is being prepared, and I think that in the coming year, the export of energy to the European Union will be significantly decreased.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, waiting for that to happen. Michał Matlak, Acting Director of the Institute of Innovation and Technology, Łukasiewicz Network. Thank you so much for joining us on World Talks.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.